All right, my friends, welcome back. So previously we completed the design of the main activity. So right now we're going to design the add user activity and the update user activity. But both of these designs are going to be pretty much the same because in both activities there's going to be 3 edit text, 1 button. So why don't we just move on over to Android Studio. Okay, so first we're going to create a new activity. I'll right-click on the project package folder. And I'll select New Activity, Empty Activity. And we'll set the name of the activity. So here I'll write Add User Activity. Create the Add User Activity by clicking the Finish button. All right, so what you're looking at is our activity. Okay, it's been created, so now we can design it. I'll open up activity.adduser.xml. Now first, I want to convert the constraint layout to linear layout. So what I'll do is I'll open up the code section, write linear layout instead of constraint layout. Also, the orientation value of this layout needs to be vertical. All right, so let's change the gravity value, and I'm going to make the gravity property center horizontal. All right, so let's continue with our design section. And I'll add 3 edit text into the design area. So the first edit text will be for the username. So I'm just going to add plain text. Second edit text will be for the user age. So I'll add number edit text. And the third edit text will be for user's email. And that's why I'll add email edit text. All right, so I need to add a button. And now let's change some properties of these components. So I want to first select all 3 edit text. And I'll change the common properties. For example, let their width be 300 dp. Its height can also be 55 dp. And let's also change the margin value so that we can leave some space between the components. So I'll make layout margin values 10 dp. And finally, we can increase the text size a little bit. Text size can be 20 sp. So now I want to add a hint to the edit text component. So I'm deleting the text of the first edit text. So to add a hint, I'm typing enter name into the hint section. And I can write enter age into the hint section of the second edit text. In the third one, I'll write the hint enter email. Okay, so what about the properties of the button? So let's let the layout margin value be 20 dp. Width of the button, 200 dp. And let's make its height 60 dp. And we can also change the text of the button. So here I'll write add user. And we can also increase the text size a little bit. I'll just make it 18 sp. Very good, very good. So now let's just determine the ID of all components. Let the ID of the first edit text be edit text name. ID of the second edit text be edit text age. ID of the third will be edit text email. And we'll let the ID of the button be button add user. All right, well, there you have it, guys. So we've completed the design of the add user activity. Now we can design the update user activity. But of course, we'll first need to start with a new activity, right? So I'll right-click on the project package folder, choose New Activity, Empty Activity. Name of this activity will be Update User Activity. And I'll create the activity just by clicking Finish. Okay, so there's our new activity. We'll open the design area. Now, like I was saying before, the design of this activity will be the same pretty much as the design of the add user activity. So you could also make a different design if you wanted to. But let's go ahead and open the add user activity and just copy the XML code here. All right, so now I'm going to select and copy all the XML code. And then we can paste all this code into the XML side of the update user activity. And now we'll have to change the IDs of the components. And remembering this particular one will be update user activity. ID will be edit text update name. Edit text update age. Edit text update email. And this ID will be button update user. Okay, so we'll open up the design section next. And I'm going to change the text of the button. And this text, of course, will be update user. Okay, so we jetted through, but we finished the design of our app. Now, before we wrap this lesson out, I do want to define Android view binding for each activity. Okay, so we'll start with the main activity first. So here I'll just write late init var main binding colon activity main binding. Now, do you remember when we added view binding into our project, activity main binding was created automatically? All right, so now we can define it. So just below the super dot on create, I'll write main binding equals activity main binding dot inflate layout inflator. Now in the next line, let's create a variable named view. And I can write main binding dot root just to the right of the equal sign. And finally, I'll pass the view parameter to the set content view function. Very cool. So now we can access the components in the main activity using the main binding object. Now, similarly, let's define our view binding in the add user and update user activities. So I'll write late init var add user binding colon activity add user binding. So now we'll define the add user binding object. Add user binding equals activity add user binding dot inflate layout inflator. Now to create the view object on the next line, val view add user binding dot root. And finally, instead of r dot layout dot activity add user, I'll write view. Okay, so now we'll be able to access the components in the add user activity by using the add user binding object. All right, so finally, we'll define the view binding in the update user activity. So here I'll write late init var update user binding colon activity update user binding. So now let's define the update user binding object. Update user binding equals activity update user binding dot inflate layout inflator. Let's create the view object on the next line. Val view equals update user binding dot root. Finally, I'll write view instead of r dot layout dot activity update user. Okay, there you go, my friends. We've defined view binding in all of our activities. So now we can write the code of our application. So before we get started with that, I want to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to learn how to add users to the database. All right, so I'll see you on the other side.